Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
The sky over London was burning. It began with a low tremor, a vibration that rattled windows and sent pigeons spiraling in panic over Westminster. Commuters on the bridge looked up, shielding their eyes, against a sudden brightness tearing through the morning clouds. At first it seemed like lightning, but the light did not fade. It grew hotter, harder, until the clouds themselves ignited. A second later, the heavens fell in sheets of fire. A tower collapsed, glass and steel folding into itself with a roar that drowned out every human scream. The Thames boiled where molten debris struck the water. Those who ran across the bridge found nowhere to run. Plasma strikes turned asphalt into rivers of glowing stone. The city that had endured centuries of war was unmade in minutes. Far across the ocean, New York met the same fate. The first salvo broke the skyline. Windows burst outward in a single shattering wave, and steel melted as though it had been waiting centuries for this end. Soldiers in Central Park fired Stinger missiles upward, their contrails beautiful, hopeless white scars against the alien ships. Shields shimmered, weapons harmlessly splintering against them. The invaders hovered above Manhattan like black knives, tilting ever so slightly, then rained molten shards in deliberate lines. Streets carved open, skyscrapers gutted from crown to base. From New York, the news feeds staggered across the world until they went dark, one by one. What remained showed brief flashes. Sydney Harbor consumed in a blast that turned sea to steam. Sao Paulo wrapped in coils of flame. The rainforest burning in sheets of emerald fire as orbital plasma carved scars 100 miles long. Humanity had no time to understand, only to endure, only to fail. In the deserts of Australia, the attack shifted. The skies cracked open with the thunder of falling iron. Not meteors, pods. Each slammed into the outback like the fist of a god, the impact sending red dust clouds climbing miles high. When they split, they bled shadows. Tall, spindly creatures of obsidian carapace and blade limbs, moving in silence toward the faint lights of Alice Springs. The war was not only from above, it had landed. Beneath Colorado granite, hidden deep within a fortress of steel and silence, the Global Defense Council watched the war unravel. Dozens of generals and ministers leaned over a holographic table that bled red icons. The map of Earth looked like a body riddled with wounds. Every city that blinked dark was another artery cut. "London is gone," a voice said. His words were flat, disbelieving. "Sydney, gone. Sao Paulo is offline. Reports from Russia. Nuclear silos struck before launch." "They're dismantling us," another whispered. At the head of the chamber stood Commander Rourke Gant, a man whose face was carved from stone and years of unending wars on Earth. His eyes traced the map without blinking, following the red tide as it swept across the continents. The room around him buzzed with panic, technicians shouting, officers demanding counterstrikes. But his voice, when it came, cut through like iron. "Our weapons don't touch them. Our fleets are ash." He let the words hang, heavier than the air itself. Then he turned. There is only one option left. Around him, silence. Everyone knew the name, but no one dared speak it. A program sealed away, locked in vaults buried deeper than nuclear stockpiles, older than most of the officers present. "You can't mean," a minister began, his face pale. Gant's glare silenced him. "Activate Guardian Protocol," he said. "Wake them, all of them." Far beneath the Rockies, alarms began to howl. Corridors lit with red strobes as engineers rushed past vault doors that had not been touched in decades. Metal groaned, locks disengaged, the air trembling with the hum of power long dormant. Row upon row of titanic capsules lined the cavernous chamber. Frost steamed off reinforced glass. Behind the first, a shape stirred. A figure too large, too heavily armored to be called human, yet unmistakably born from human hands. The glass spiderwebbed. A hiss of steam curled into the dark. Eyes opened. Not the eyes of a man. Something forged for war. Something humanity had sworn would never be unleashed. And now, Earth's last defense had awakened. Beneath the Colorado mountains, the vaults of stone and steel groaned open. The chamber was a cathedral of war, carved by human hands for a single purpose. Rows of towering capsules loomed in the half-light, each sealed with frost that curled like smoke around their edges. Engineers moved between them with hands that trembled, checking consoles, unlocking restraints. The first capsule split with a crack like thunder. Steam burst outward, flooding the floor in a white haze. Through the fog, a shape leaned forward. Massive, armored, unmistakably human-built. The Guardian took its first step. The deck shook beneath its weight. Its head was helmeted, fused to the body, with a visor of burning crimson light. Plates of alloy wrapped its frame like a second skeleton, beneath which cords of synthetic muscle flexed and tightened. Tubes pumped coolant through a chest reactor that throbbed with a faint nuclear glow. But when it moved, it did so with purpose, not hesitation. When its voice came, deep and metallic, it was clear, steady, and intelligent. Guardian 1, online, standing ready for Earth. The engineers froze. They had heard rumors, but not this. These were not mindless war machines. They were warriors, trained and prepared, locked away for the day humanity would need them. More capsules split. One by one, the Guardians emerged, each towering but deliberate in movement, their voices filling the chamber. Guardian 2, prepared for deployment. Guardian 3, operational. Commander Rourke Gant stood at the observation rail above, his voice low, steady. Record the activation. Guardian units are online. The young officer beside him swallowed hard. Sir, you're really going to use them? Gant did not look away from the chamber. They were built for this day. We've prepared for an invasion since the day we understood the stars. Now it's here, and so are they. While the Guardians armed themselves, Earth's map only bled redder. From Brazil to Japan, alien icons multiplied, anchoring themselves in every hemisphere. But the thickest cluster pulsed in the heart of Australia, where the invaders had landed their pods and begun carving out a foothold. The alien ground troops, bipedal, insectoid, armored in obsidian plates, moved with frightening coordination. Civilians had fled inland, but the swarm cut through towns and roads, tearing apart resistance and establishing a perimeter. Alice Springs had gone silent. Satellite imagery showed columns of smoke rising where human battalions had last reported. That was where humanity would strike back. The Guardians did not need to be carried. They flew. Night sky over the outback. A low vibration rolled across the desert as shapes rose from the horizon, armored silhouettes streaking fire behind them. Flight systems flared like meteors, their engines a controlled thunder that rattled the red sands. Below, Australian Defence Force remnants crouched behind shattered ridges, rifles useless against the advancing aliens. They looked up, expecting more bombardment. Instead, they saw them. Giants descending like burning angels. Guardian 1 dropped from the sky, impact cracking the desert floor. It rose instantly, rotary cannon unfolding from its forearm, barrels screaming as tungsten storms ripped through the alien lines. Obsidian carapaces burst apart, ichor spraying into the sand. Guardian 2 swept down, flight stabilizers kicking up cyclones of dust. With a strike from its hammer, an entire pod of invaders shattered like glass. Guardian 3 hovered above the battlefield, launching a storm of micro-missiles that arced skyward before diving into clusters of enemy infantry, detonating in a series of fireballs that lit the horizon. The soldiers on the ground stared in shock. Where moments before they had faced annihilation, now the tide turned. The aliens countered quickly, plasma fire slashing the night. Shields rippled across Guardian armor, absorbing blasts until they faltered. One Guardian staggered under the barrage, reactor screaming. Still, it charged forward, blade igniting from its wrist, cutting through the swarm in arcs of white fire. Another Guardian seized an enemy by its thorax and hurled it into a formation, scattering them like broken glass. The battle was brutal. One Guardian fell, armor cracked, reactor spilling fire into the sand. But even in its last moments, it triggered an overload that consumed dozens of enemies in a single blast. And for the first time since the invasion began, the aliens fell back. Drones captured the footage, streaming across what remained of Earth's networks. Civilians hiding in basements or bunkers saw the images flicker to life. Where they had watched cities burn and soldiers die, they now saw Earth's defenders rise, engineered, armored, and utterly committed to their cause. Hope, fragile but real, began to stir. At the Colorado Command Bunker, aka Fort Eisenhower, Gant watched the feeds without blinking. Around him, officers erupted in cheers, relief flooding their voices. But he did not smile. He leaned closer to the display, eyes fixed on the Guardians, striding through fire and wreckage, their visors glowing in the smoke-filled night. They had been made for this, prepared in silence, locked away in secret vaults for the day humanity faced extinction. Now they walked the earth again, not as relics, but as its shield. "We've woken the Guardians," Gant said quietly. "Now we'll see if it was enough." The desert still smoldered when the transmission reached Fort Eisenhower. Static bled across the command screens. Then Guardian 3's voice thundered through the speakers. "Guardian 3 engaged. Heavy fire. Uploading combat feed." The signal stuttered, shrieked, then steadied for a moment. "Commander, I will not survive, but I will send them something they will not forget." The line went dead. Moments later, sensors recorded the overload, a reactor detonation powerful enough to crack the alien line and vaporize a dozen of their pods. The comms officers at Fort Eisenhower froze, headsets still hissing with static. Everyone knew. Guardian 3 was gone. In the silence that followed, Gant's voice was iron. "He gave us the breach. Hold on to it." Hours later, the surviving Guardians descended onto the landing platforms at Fort Eisenhower. Armor blackened, plating warped, hydraulic lines hissing. They looked like veterans of a war that had barely begun. Engineers rushed forward, teams swarming with plasma cutters and welding torches, sealing ruptures, replacing scorched plates. Sparks lit the cavernous hangar like a forge. Each repair was a battlefield surgery, hydraulic fluid draining like blood, reactors cooling like fevered hearts. Guardian 1 stood tall, even as the teams worked, voice steady, resonant. Guardian 3 is confirmed destroyed. His combat data is already in your systems. His sacrifice must not be wasted. Guardian 2's tone was slower, heavier, each word deliberate. He struck well. That is all a soldier requires. The men nearby said nothing. They simply worked, sparks showering their armor, jaws clenched as they patched up Earth's only shield. In the War Council above the hangar, Gant reviewed the feeds. Images of Guardian 3's last stand replayed across the holo display. Plasma fire tearing through its frame. Missiles streaking from its shoulders until the very end, the final surge before the reactor erupted. Engineers confirmed that in those last seconds, he had transmitted a corrupted block of alien data before his systems went dark. Gant's voice carried steel. He gave us more than victory. He left us a weapon we haven't even begun to understand. A young officer hesitated. Sir, we don't know what he sent. It could be a trap. It could, Gant admitted. But Guardian 3 knew the cost. He made his choice. We honor it by using everything he gave us. Later, in the lower levels, Guardian 1 and 2 were placed into their maintenance bays. Towers of machinery lowered arms, fitted with welding torches, power feeds, diagnostic rigs. Sparks rained as deep fractures were sealed, alloy relayed across their frames. It was less repair than ritual, human hands working side by side with titans built to bleed in their place. Guardian 1 spoke first, voice calm, measured. My reactor shields held under sustained fire, but only barely. Reinforcement will be required before next deployment. The engineers logged every word. They had expected dumb machines. Instead, they found partners reporting damage as if they were men returning from the front. Guardian 2's voice came after a long pause. Replace my left actuator. It drags. It makes my flight unbalanced. The request was precise, efficient. That was how Guardian 2 spoke. Only what mattered, nothing more. Near midnight, Dr. Miles Davis arrived in the command hall with his slate of data. Tall, sharp-eyed, his uniform wrinkled from hours without rest, he carried Guardian 3's final message. Commander, he said, voice taut, the fragments he sent us, they don't match Guardian code. We are certain now. It's alien. Gant's eyes narrowed. You can make sense of it? Not yet, Miles admitted. But if we can decrypt even half, we may have their ship schematics, weapons, shields, something we can use. Around the table, the council members shifted. To them, it was a spark of hope and a reminder of the cost. Gant spoke last. He didn't die for nothing. Get to work. Make his death matter. In the hangar, repairs wound down. Guardian 1 stood tall again. Scorched armor replaced with fresh plating. Reactor humming with renewed power. Guardian 2 flexed its massive frame, testing the replaced actuator. The motion smooth once more. Both stood facing the great armored doors that led out into the night. Neither moved, yet both seemed poised, ready for the next summons. Soldiers passing by lowered their heads as they walked past, not out of fear, but respect. When Gant entered the hangar, his voice carried like a battle standard. The invaders think us broken. They think Earth lies down. Show them otherwise. Guardian 1 replied with quiet finality. We will. Guardian 2 followed, voice clipped, unyielding. Next time, They fall further. Earth had lost one guardian, but two still stood, and their war had only begun. The brood carrier held its orbit above the wounded planet Earth. From the surface, it was only darkness where stars should be, a silhouette blotting constellations. It did not shine. It consumed light. The vessel was no mere machine, its hull flexed with faint tremors, alive, armored plates shifting with breath. Membranes stretched across skeletal ridges, humming with the vibration of countless minds feeding into the command nexus. Along its belly clung hundreds of lesser craft, angular and veined, like larvae attached to a greater host. Beneath them, incubation chambers swelled and contracted, nurturing descent pods slick with resin and slime. The interior was a labyrinth of pulsing arteries. Resin-lined tunnels throbbed with light as fluids coursed through living conduits. The ship was a womb and a weapon both. To step inside was to enter the body of the hive itself, an extension of Chrysalon, the world of their birth. At the heart of the brood carrier crouched the Swarm King. His throne was not built, but grown, hardened from layers of calcified resin, spines arching like a crown above him. His armored limbs rested against the living surface, claws sunk deep into the conduit veins. Through that contact, he communed not only with the vessel, but with the distant mind of the hive. Before him, the advisor shifted its blade-like limbs and bent low. Its voice came as sharp clicks, clipped and exact. Prey resisted. Constructs deployed. Their pattern is broken. The Swarm King's mandibles ground, each vibration rippling across the resin walls. They defend with weapons not of flesh, machines that think. Guardians. Unnatural, the advisor answered. Prey should collapse. Instead, it bites. It bleeds us. The Swarm King rose to his full height, armored carapace unfolding in layers. He towered over the chamber, a silhouette of angles and blades. His thorax vibrated, voice filling the command nexus. Then they are no prey. They are predators. The brood will learn their pattern. The brood will consume their secrets. This world will become nest. Around them, the chamber walls pulsed brighter, alive with the rhythm of countless minds echoing the command. Far below, Earth turned, blue oceans shining beneath the clouds. To the hive, it was not beauty. It was resource, a cradle for the next generation. The advisor tilted its head, mandibles snapping in measured rhythm. Their bodies carry the right heat, the right veins. Eggs will grow fast within them. Then we seed them, the Swarm King decreed. Pods will drop into their hives of stone and glass. The brood will tear them open. Their lungs will breathe our spawn. Their blood will feed the hatchlings. Their screams will echo until drowned by the swarm. The brood carrier answered with a low hum, its living hull rippling as though it approved. Across its underbelly, smaller craft detached in silent unison. Like a cloud of spores, they spread into the void, engines glowing with sickly green light as they angled toward the atmosphere. Inside the incubation bays, descent pods shuddered, fluids draining as restraints dissolved. Within each, brood warriors unfolded, limbs bristling, eyes reflecting the light of the hive. They did not think as individuals. They did not question. Their purpose was one: to descend, to seed, to spread. The Swarm King lowered himself back onto the throne, mandibles flexing. His voice carried through every conduit, through every brood warrior's mind. This planet resists. It matters not. It will become nest. Their oceans will hatch us. Their cities will cradle us. Their bodies will serve us. The advisor shifted, mandibles clacking in agreement. And the fallen weapon? The Swarm King's thorax vibrated with deep resonance, his reply sharp as a blade. They will break. One has already fallen. The rest will follow. For each we shatter, their own strength will feed us. Their broken frames will be resin. Their iron bones turned to brood casing. The brood carrier trembled as the smaller ships pierced the upper atmosphere, leaving trails of fire against the blue sky. Pods followed in waves, raining toward the planet like burning seeds. The hive did not see invasion. It saw expansion, natural and inevitable. The Swarm King's gaze turned toward the holographic image of Earth rotating before him. Cities glowed faintly in the dark, clusters of prey hives waiting to be harvested. He clicked once, a final command. Begin nesting. Begin seeding. Their world is now ours. Silence answered. Across the brood carrier, across the swarm, millions of minds echoed the decree. From the surface of Earth, witnesses would see streaks of fire falling through the sky. They would not see the truth, that within each falling flame was not just a warrior, but the seed of extinction. The command center of Fort Eisenhower never slept. Beneath the granite crust of Colorado, steel corridors hummed with the lifeblood of the Global Defense Council. Colonel Rook stood at the primary console, hands braced against the cold edge, when the incoming feed lit up his screens. It wasn't the familiar tactical green of Guardian sensors. This was raw, shaky, human. The header flashed. Marine Recon Unit 7, Northern Australia. The signature pulsed. Team leader authentication. Static fizzed. The image sharpened. Rook leaned closer. The helmet cam tilted through smoke. Night vision flickered on, bathing the world in ghostly green. Bodies lay broken in the dust. Marines sprawled where they had fallen. Their armor was torn open, as if shredded by blades sharper than steel. Rook's throat tightened. He recognized the insignia. His men. His order. His responsibility. The camera turned. One Marine was still moving. Justin Ferris. He staggered through the wreckage of his team, blood streaking his face, his rifle long gone. Recon unit compromised. Contact with hostiles. All others KIA. Recording final intel. He dragged himself against a shattered rock outcropping and pointed the lens forward. Rook's fists clenched as the view came into focus. The alien nest spread across the landscape like a tumor. Pods pulsed with sick light, veins of resin anchoring them into the scorched soil. Marines' bodies, men and women who had once laughed, trained, saluted under the same flag, hung in those pods. Their chests rose, faint, unnatural, as if breathing only for what grew inside them. Their mouths twitched. From their throats protruded translucent growths. Inside their bodies, something writhed. One soldier convulsed in the pod, skin stretched from within. Through the membrane, Rook saw shapes moving, pressing outward, searching for escape. A muffled scream tore from the Marine's lips, cut short as a slick, clawed limb tore upward through the ribcage. The team leader's breath hitched, but his hand stayed steady. They're using us. Incubation chambers, human bodies, nests, eggs inside flesh. Another body ruptured on screen. Fluid splashed against the lens, streaking the view with milky ichor. Rook heard his staff behind him. Stifled curses, gasps of horror, one officer retching into his hands. Ferris coughed, spitting blood. His voice grew hoarse. "Sending everything! All visuals!" The camera jolted. The feed went wild. Flashes of claws, resin walls, the inhuman silhouette of brood warriors closing in. A hiss split the comm, then black. Only the crackle of static remained. Rook straightened, jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. His voice cut the silence like a blade. "Launch the Guardians." They went at once. Guardian 1 led the ascent from Fort Eisenhower's vault, wings unfurling with thunder as the great war form rose into the sky. Guardian 2 followed, scarred from the last battle, but unwilling to falter. Their frames glowed against the clouds, and men below looked up as though glimpsing angels of steel. Rook watched through their feeds. Every optic streamed into command. The Guardians soared toward the coordinates the Marine had died for. But as they neared the zone, the sky struck back. Without warning, Guardian 2 convulsed mid-flight. His frame lit with a storm of sparks. The air rippled where nothing should be. An unseen wall shattered against him, throwing the warform sideways in a scream of tearing metal. He plummeted like a wounded eagle, trailing fire across the sky. "Guardian 2 is hit!" Voices shouted across the control room. Guardian 1 banked hard, engines roaring. He caught his brother's frame before it smashed into the desert, dragging the heavy colossus back through the turbulence. His voice rumbled across the comm, flat and implacable. "He is down. I will return him." Rook's hands trembled on the console. "Pull back. Do not engage. That's an order." The great frames dwindled on the horizon, smoke trailing behind them. High above, aboard the brood carrier, the Swarm King's throne chamber trembled with laughter that was not human. His mandibles clashed, sharp and echoing through the hive conduits. "They did not detect the barrier," he hissed. "Primitive. Blind." At Fort Eisenhower, Guardian 2 was lowered into the repair bay, his armored plating torn and sparking. Engineers swarmed the frame like ants over a wounded lion, cutting away scorched panels, pouring coolant into overheated circuits. Guardian 1 loomed nearby, silent, optics glowing, his head bowed toward his injured brother. Rook stood in the command chamber when the doors hissed open, and Dr. Miles Davis strode in. The scientist's eyes were bloodshot, but alive with fierce intensity. "Colonel, we have something." Rook turned. It had better be good news. Davis set a slate down, its surface flickering with alien script harvested from Guardian 3's last transmission. Guardian 3's final data: biological signatures, hive resonance, cellular structures. They're insectoid, Colonel. Every scan confirms it. Which means... He hesitated, then smiled grimly. "We test them like insects." Rook frowned. "You're saying pesticides?" "More than that. Sound, pheromones, neural disruption. Our insects respond to things we don't even notice. If we can exploit those pathways," Davis leaned in. "But we need a live specimen. 2, preferably. To test reactions." Rook's eyes hardened. "Alive. That's not simple." "It's necessary," Davis said. Rook nodded, then keyed the comm. "Get me Major Eric Halverson." Hours later, the desert of northern Australia burned beneath a full moon. Shadows moved across the ground. Not Guardians this time, but men. Marines in adaptive camo crawled over stone and sand, every breath measured, every step silent. At their front was Major Halverson, face painted black, rifle slung low. His pale eyes flicked from dune to ridge, scanning with the precision of a predator. Above, Guardian 1 roared through the night sky, launching salvo after salvo against the invisible shield. His beams lit the clouds with fire, detonations thundering across the land. The world shook with his futile fury. Halverson's men did not look up. The noise was their cover. Inside their ship, the aliens stirred. To them, the humans repeated mistakes, pounding the shield as though ignorance were strength. The advisor's mandibles clicked in derision. See how they waste their iron? Their minds do not see. They break themselves against what they cannot feel. They are stubborn prey. The Swarm King reclined, savoring the illusion. Let them. The shield holds. Their stubbornness amuses me. The chamber walls pulsed brighter, echoing the approval of 1,000 lesser minds. In their arrogance, they failed to notice the shadows slipping past resin walls, hugging the earth. On the ground, Halverson gave the hand signal. His marines fanned out, circling a cluster of brood warriors. From their packs, they drew weapons not of bullets, but resonance. Emitters shaped like rifles, tuned to frequencies human ears could never hear. Halverson waited until the aliens gathered, their carapaces glinting in the moonlight. Then he fired. The air itself screamed. Brood warriors dropped instantly, limbs thrashing as the hypersonic assault tore through their senses. They clattered against the stone, mandibles clicking in agony. Halverson's men surged forward, nets reinforced with shock filaments snapping open. The aliens were dragged down, bound, their screeches muffled against the sand. 2 specimens, alive. Halverson keyed his comm. Package secured. His voice was ice, steady even as ichor dripped from his knife. Tell Fort Eisenhower we've got their test subjects. At dawn, the steel doors of Fort Eisenhower parted, hissing open to admit armored transports. Marines filed in, hauling 2 massive containment pods between them. Inside, the captured aliens writhed, limbs restrained by energy coils, mandibles bound shut. Their multifaceted eyes burned with hate. Dr. Miles Davis stood at the lab gates, pale, but alight with terrible curiosity. He pressed his hand against the glass, studying the creatures with awe and revulsion. They'll do, he murmured. Oh yes, they'll do. Behind him, Rook watched in silence. He felt no awe, only the weight of what came next. For the first time since the war began, they had more than wreckage. They had living enemies, and in their suffering, humanity might just find its weapon. The containment lab beneath Fort Eisenhower thrummed with controlled chaos. Fluorescent lights buzzed over rows of steel counters, cold glass, and thick transparent steel that separated the scientists from the living things inside. The captured brood warriors were restrained in reinforced pods, limbs locked tight by electromagnetic shackles. Their chitin flexed against the constraints. Their eyes, clusters of glistening obsidian, followed everything. The air carried the stench of scorched resin and a strange, sickly sweetness, like decaying fruit. Dr. Miles Davis didn't flinch. He stood inches from the nearest alien, data pad in one hand, remote in the other. Around him, technicians monitored chemical dispersion levels, acoustic pulse strength, and neural response mapping. A speaker whined into life, a frequency humans couldn't hear, but the brood warrior reacted instantly. Its mandibles snapped open, head jerking. Clawed limbs thrashed until the restraints groaned. Response recorded, said Davis. Try the second emitter. Variant C. A second frequency surged into the room. This time, the alien froze. Its muscles seized. Its breathing, if it could be called that, stopped. A tremble ran through its body. Then it collapsed in the harness, twitching in place. Davis looked to his team. That's our kill note, Across the room, a second brood warrior was being doused in a cloud of synthetically modified pheromones. The reaction was immediate. The creature began clicking in a staccato rhythm, its claws tapping in sync. Its body swayed. A false calm. "Dominance protocol triggered," one of the researchers said, eyes wide. "It thinks something superior is nearby." Davis nodded slowly. "We use that to herd them. Good. Package it." He turned to the observation deck. Colonel Rook stood behind the glass, arms crossed, silent. "They're still animals, Colonel," Davis said. "Just highly aggressive ones. We have what we need." Rook spoke without moving. "Weaponize it fast. We're done reacting." In the command center, the mission brief was already underway. Holograms flared to life, maps of the Australian outback stitched with thermal overlays. The ruined terrain around the former recon site now pulsed with alien heat signatures. A hive had grown overnight. Major Eric Halverson stepped forward. His uniform still smelled of desert dust and ichor. Behind him stood his team, the same Marines who had gone into the dark with him before and returned scarred but alive. "Objectives are clear," Rook said. "Destroy the nest. Retrieve no specimens. Total purge." "Weapons?" Halverson asked. Davis tapped his slate. "Sonic disruptors, as you used before, but upgraded with precise frequency payloads. Pheromone mines to confuse and corral. All non-ballistic. They'll hit the nervous system harder than bullets ever could." Halverson grunted in approval. "And air support?" "None," Rook said. "This stays quiet. No Guardian flyover this time. But the Guardians will engage in orbit. If we hit both fronts at once, we split their attention." Halverson's eyes gleamed. "Then we go loud in the dirt, while your angels knock on heaven's door." Rook nodded. "Dismissed. Your birds leave in 10. The desert shimmered beneath the setting sun as the dropships tore across the sky. Engines hummed low to avoid detection. Inside, the Marines sat in silence, their armor fitted with new coils and compact emitters. The ships touched down 5 clicks from the nest's outer perimeter. From there, the team advanced on foot, low and lethal, shadows in the rock. Halverson's HUD pulsed with markers, pheromone mines deployed, acoustic emitters planted, line-of-fire grids drawn with ghost light across the sand. When they reached the first ridge, he gave the signal. The ground sang. A chorus of frequencies blasted through the valley, some audible, some not. The nest below exploded in motion. Warriors poured from tunnels, screeching, stumbling. Some collapsed mid-charge, their senses overwhelmed. Others turned on each other, confused by false pheromone trails. Halverson's team struck like a scalpel. Net guns fired. Resonance grenades detonated in clusters. Where aliens surged, disruptors screamed them to the ground. No bullets, no wasted ammo, just precision and pain. Inside the hive, tunnels pulsed with chaos. Incubation pods split from the thrashing of their hosts. The brood commander within howled, a sound never meant for human ears, and began clawing its way up to the surface. Halverson met it there. It rose twice his height, plated in bone-black armor, jaws slick with venom. He didn't hesitate. The sonic weapon fired once. The creature's screech shattered in its throat. Halverson stepped in, drove a second emitter against its chest, and pulled the trigger again. The brood commander convulsed, curled in on itself, and burst apart in a shower of ichor and flame. The nest began to collapse. "Detonators now!" Halverson roared. Charges placed deep inside the tunnels lit one after another. Fire raced through the hive. Resin turned to molten slag. the air filled with the death cries of things not born of Earth. As the Marines retreated, the desert behind them burned. At the same time, above the planet, the sky split open. Guardian 1 and Guardian 2, freshly repaired and hungering for war, tore from low orbit and surged toward the brood carrier. The alien ship was a vast crescent of black armor, bristling with organic spires. Its hull pulsed with the rhythm of a hive's heart. The Guardians came in hot, fusion cores screaming, trailing blue fire. Energy beams lashed out, carving into the brood carrier's hull. Swarm fighters peeled from the vessel's belly, a flurry of bone and venom, their wings hissing through the void. Guardian 1 wove through the storm, ripping fighters apart with twin plasma cannons. Guardian 2 deployed flak bursts, detonating enemy drones in flashes of electric thunder. They dove together, a coordinated arc of fury, two gods of metal carving a path through a sky of monsters. Then they struck the hull. Guardian 1 hit first. The outer shell of the brood carrier shattered beneath his mass. Chitin and alloy split, scattering debris in all directions. Guardian 1 vanished into the wound he had made. Guardian 2 followed, clearing the entry point with a pulse from his arc cannons. Warriors boiled from the inner walls of the ship, crawling across the structure like ants over a wound. They converged. Too slow. Inside, the corridors were slick with life. Membranes pulsed. Strange fluids ran in streams. The Guardians stomped through it all, uncaring, their steps liquefying whatever lay beneath. They tore forward. Guardian 1 deployed a pulse blade, slicing through wave after wave of brood warriors. Guardian 2 covered the rear, shredding ambushers with plasma scatter fire. The brood carrier shook. The hive was panicking. Ahead, the structure widened. A throne chamber, vast and pulsing. The Swarm King awaited them, cloaked in shadow and smoke, his frame surrounded by his remaining elite. He rose as the Guardians entered, his mandibles twitching. "You breach my sanctuary," the Swarm King hissed. "You are but armor and fire. We are Legion." Guardian 1 raised his arm cannon. "Legion dies today." The chamber lit up. The throne chamber blazed. Guardian 1's arm cannon pulsed, unleashing a column of blue-white fire. The plasma torrent bathed the walls, igniting hive membranes and vaporizing warriors in their tracks. The ceiling blistered, support struts buckled, and smoke poured through the structure like blood from a wound. But at the center, untouched, stood the Swarm King. He remained motionless, cloaked in a shimmer. The fire parted around him, bending at impossible angles, licking the edges of an invisible sphere. Within that zone of stillness stood his advisor and a handful of elite guards. The Swarm King didn't flinch. His mandibles twitched in distaste. "Primitive," he rasped, voice slithering through the heat. Guardian 2 joined his brother, stepping through flame and debris, scanning. "Energy field," he transmitted. "Localized. Contained. They are shielded." "Then we burn the rest," Guardian 1 growled. Behind them, the chamber erupted with motion. From tunnels in the ceiling, walls and floor, the brood surged. Warriors of every caste, from thin-limbed slicers to hulking enforcers, pouring toward the Guardians in a tide of screech and fang. The Guardians moved. Guardian 1 spun his pulse blade, the monomolecular edge leaving a glowing arc with each stroke. Limbs fell. Heads rolled. Chitin cracked like glass under his feet. Guardian 2 deployed scatterbursts, rapid flares of plasma that turned clustered enemies into paste. He switched to close-range shredders, carving a path to the chamber's upper tiers. The Swarm King watched as his elite fell. He turned slightly, speaking only to the advisor. "Recall them." The advisor blinked, then bowed its grotesque head. Its hands moved over a crystalline device embedded in its chest. The pulse of the hive changed. Across Earth, in the burning wreckage of the Australian nest, the few remaining aliens, scorched, feral, crawling through ash, suddenly stopped. One by one, they turned toward the sky. Then they moved. Abandoning their tunnels, they scrambled into escape vessels buried deep beneath the soil. The swarm obeyed the call. Above Earth, the brood carrier trembled as new vessels screamed toward it, sleek, living transports that glowed with the same oily sheen as their parent ship. They punched through orbit like falling stars in reverse, homing in on the brood carrier's docking apertures. The Guardians didn't pause. "New targets incoming," Guardian 1 said. "They're trying to swarm the ship." "Let them come," Guardian 2 replied. "This ends here." Inside the throne chamber, alien bodies stacked knee-deep. Still the wave came. Still the Guardians fought. Outside, in the cold of space, the brood carrier's dorsal hull lit with new fire as boarding pods reattached. Warriors spilled into their dying vessel, desperate to protect their king. The Guardians split. Guardian 2 turned, blasting a hole through the chamber wall. He leapt through, landing in a sloped corridor, slick with slime. His plasma drives fired, propelling him upward toward the outer decks. Intercept course. He would not let the swarm reinforce. Guardian 1 remained. He advanced slowly, burning through the last of the inner guard. His blade hissed against the ground as he stepped toward the throne. The Swarm King stood waiting. "I have watched your kind," the creature said, voice low, calm. "You build machines to bleed in your place. You hide inside armor, but you do not understand what you fight." Guardian 1 raised his cannon. "Do you?" The Swarm King's mandibles widened into something like a grin. "I created it." Then the advisor triggered the departure. At the far end of the chamber, a sleek vessel dislodged from the hive's inner belly, a pod large enough for a small crew. Its engines warmed with a pulse that twisted light around it. Guardian 1 lunged forward, unleashing a last blast. The plasma struck the shield, bent, twisted, dissolved. The Swarm King and his circle stepped aboard the vessel. The door closed. Then, light warped. The escape ship flared with energy, snapped into faster than light, and vanished beyond reach. Inside the throne, silence followed. Guardian 1 stared at the place the Swarm King had stood. For a moment, nothing moved but fire. Then behind him, a roar. Guardian 2 had breached the incoming wave. On the upper decks, he tore through boarding parties before they could organize, collapsing corridors and venting decks into vacuum. Alien screams spiraled into space. Below, Guardian 1 charged toward the carrier's core. They would not let this vessel live. Together, the Guardians turned the brood carrier into a tomb. From chamber to conduit, they moved with purpose. No mercy, no hesitation. When they reached the bioreactor at the ship's heart, Guardian 1 planted a fusion core beneath its membrane. "Triggering overload," he said. "Countdown synced," Guardian 2 confirmed. "Time to departure. 1 minute." They ascended together, bodies streaked with ichor, limbs scorched from battle. Behind them, the ship groaned. Bulkheads cracked. Power arced. As they broke through the hull and rocketed into space, the brood carrier convulsed one last time. Then it died. A nova bloomed behind the Guardians, silent, magnificent. Chunks of hive architecture spiraled away. What had once been the seat of the swarm's power was now debris. On Earth, the skies cleared. The Australian hive site, long buried and corrupted, smoldered under a rising sun. No alien survived. Fort Eisenhower received the all-clear from orbital feeds. The command center erupted in cheers, shouts, then silence as Rook stepped forward, hand resting on the console. Status? Carrier destroyed. Guardian 1 and 2 returning. Any ships escaped? A pause, then a comms officer's voice, quiet. One escaped. FTL trajectory unknown. Rook stared at the screen. We need new satellites, new scouts, eyes in every system. This isn't over. High above, the Guardians coasted through the upper atmosphere. Two giants limping home. Beneath them, Earth turned slowly, clouds drifting over oceans that had almost known extinction. The swarm had retreated, not ended, and deep in the black between stars, something ancient remembered Earth's name.